All right, welcome back to part 2 of the special guest episode with Christopher Trizzino of the Trizzino Tennis Academy. Hopefully you just listened to his incredible story about how he came to be a great coach, running a great academy after starting tennis so late. So now we're going to get into his coaching philosophies and his different thoughts on how he's tried to form his great tennis program and help players how he feels best. Hope you enjoy part 2. Well, I'm going to take you all the way back, all right? Because
I'm ready.
Think about your journey and how many things that you decided to do in comparison to the kids you work with and their goals, right?
Mm-hmm.
I ask the kids I work with all the time, especially as they start to get later into their teenage years, and they say, I'm like, hey, so what are your top 4 or 5 schools you'd love to get into and play college tennis at? They list their schools, and I say, all right, what if you don't get in on that team? And you have to go play at a lower level team or D2, D3, because almost everybody says a D1 team. No one's ever told me a D3 team.
Yep.
Big disrespect because there's a lot of good D2 and D3 teams, but that's for
Big
separate.
time.
So then I'm like, hey, what if you can get into the school of your choice, but only play club tennis? Or you can get into a D2 or lower level D1 or D3 school, and you can start. You can play on a team. Well, what would you do? I've gotten a lot of answers that are like, no, I'll just play club tennis. Yeah, I just want to go to the school I want to go to. Or, well, gee, I don't know. I haven't thought about that. And so everything is their sole purpose to playing tennis becomes about getting into the college they want, getting the UTR they need, and accomplishing something within tennis. And when we talk about your story, you weren't trying to accomplish anything. You just wanted to be involved in tennis, learn how to be a great coach, and then you wanted to learn how to be a player. You just followed whatever you wanted to do, and it just led you to where you are. You weren't so concerned about well, I need to get this. I need to get into that school because if I don't get into that school, I'm a failure.
Correct.
How do you deal with that? The kids that you have now, I'm sure you get that from some of the parents, the kids. Well, their UTR's this. They're not gonna. I don't think they're gonna get in. Oh my gosh, we need a homeschool, don't we? They're not gonna make it. And this panic button when things aren't going well, where it's like, hey, just let them love the game and play. And then from the players themselves, right? Like, oh my gosh, my UTR is going down. Or what do you think about all that?
So this is a multiple part answer. So a fun question I have for you. Did you ever plan on having Abone tennis online? Was that your plan?
No.
No, it's what you took steps and it brought you there, right? You didn't know the impact that fatherhood would have on you, right? You had no idea what that felt like. You knew that you loved your wife and you knew that you wanted a family, but you didn't know the impact that having a son would make. You don't know what that emotion is like when it's an unknown. But like I said, and I really genuinely live by this. I see a step in front of me, I'm going to take it. It's going to lead me somewhere, but you don't have control of what that pathway is. But I think the thing that with my players, to answer the next part of your question, is I am constantly educating my players and parents. Constantly. So I fortunately don't deal with the tennis shenanigans that you hear that goes on across the whole world about UTR this and that and rankings and this. And it's like, I don't deal with it because I educate all of my players and my parents daily on what it is that we're trying to accomplish. But that is also because of I'm trying to then, like I said before, what Trizzino Tennis Academy, to me, what that means is all the experiences that I had, right? So I'm trying to share with them the lessons that I've learned from making decisions and where it led me. I had no damn clue that I'd be starting my own tennis academy ever in my life. I've achieved more in my life than I actually thought that I ever would. 17, 18-year-old Chris, you ask him at that moment, I was lost, confused, no idea what I wanted. Couldn't tell you. I thought I was going to be a failure. I thought I had absolutely no future. because I was looking at what everybody else in my family was doing, what my dad accomplished, what my aunts and uncles accomplished. I'm going to be a nobody. But I ended up finding a pathway, and I took the steps that I could see in front of me, and it brought me to this. And that's the same thing that I educate my parents, not my parents, my kids, my players, families, that I educate all of them on what that looks like. When I'm at tournaments, I'm sitting next to the parent and I'm educating them about what I'm seeing about their player, what that looks like. And it's so funny. I've recently had a parent comes up to me like, she's so funny. It's like every 2 weeks she comes to me and she goes, "You were right." And it's like constant. She does not want to admit it, but it's like I'm like, listen, here's where your kid is at. Let's do this, this, and this. And I promise you, I don't know what that timeline looks like. I can give you an idea, but I know what it is that she's going to accomplish. And then the time goes by, and there's some really bad losses, and then there's some really good wins, and then I share with people about, in order to get to, like, let's look at it as, like, let's say there's levels, level 1, level 2, level 3. To get from level 1 to level 2, it's not just a jump. There's level 1, A, B, C, D, whatever. And I explain to my kids and my parents that your player, let's say you're comparing to a person that they can't beat. Before you beat that person, you lose 2 and 2. That's stage A. Stage B, you lose 4 and 4. Stage C, you lose in a breaker, 2 breakers. Stage D, you split sets, but you lose. And then the next one is you split sets, but the sets were closer and the breaker was closer. And then you have a split set win, and then you have a straight set win. And I was like, but how many people are willing to go through that whole series? And that's what I educate, like, my players and parents on all the time. I'm like, guys, you're not just going to make that incredible jump, but you do have to be willing to go through those stages to accomplish that. So for me, it's constant education. I repeat myself every single night at the end of our clinics. I say the same thing. The kids are probably tired of hearing it, but if I don't say it, it's not going to be in their head. But no, it's just constant. It's constant effort and constant work. It never ends.
So, I mean, it sounds like in order for you to manage all that and make sure everyone stays in a good and healthy place, parent education is just massive for you.
Oh, it's most important, because if you don't educate them, then they're not going to buy into your system or buy into what you're doing, and then they're not going to make the decision to go to tournaments that they need to. And then 6 months goes by, and when they've missed out on the opportunity to play, let's say 1 to 2, so average 1.5, they had the opportunity to play, 6 to 10 tournaments in those last 6 months, but because I didn't educate them, they didn't buy into the system, so they didn't bother committing, signing up for a tournament, or driving 4 hours to Charlotte because the kid was going to get that experience. But they didn't do the tournament because little Johnny had a really bad showing in an L6. Well, if he can't win in an L6, why would I put him in an L4 Open the next weekend? Well, because you never know what could happen in the L4. You can't compare the two. So, but if I'm not constantly educating these parents, then they're not going to consistently make the decisions that require to take the steps to get to where they want their kid to be. Because a lot of the time, if they don't, I hear it all the time, like, well, if they're not winning, if they can't win an L5, why would they even go to this tournament? Or if they perform poorly in an L3, why would we take a flight to this tournament? It's like, well, that's part of the experience that's required. You never know when your week is going to be your week, or whenever you have an experience that the light bulb clicks.
We started the podcast with how busy you are, right? And just how gracious I am for your time here. So you're already on court a lot every day of the week. You're going to tournaments, which we're going to hit up on that. I mean, where do you find the time to talk to these parents? Because I think that's the biggest downfall and the biggest struggle for a lot of coaches. It's they're on the court all day. I think deep down they understand the parent communication part is important at the high performance level. They're tired. They don't want to make the effort, and they want to go home. They got a family. I understand it, but somehow you find the time. I mean, is it just prioritizing? Do you have to take some stuff out, or you just never sleep?
Well, it's the structure, right? It's the structure of what an academy does. It is also the structure of what program you are a part of. Is parent education a priority in the program you are a part of? Or is your kid just showing up for a 2-hour clinic on a Tuesday, Thursday, and that's the only time that you ever see coach? For me, there's a few things. If I need to make 5 minutes of time at the beginning of a private lesson, I will tell the family, hey, can you come with your kid? We need to have a quick little check in for the first 5 minutes while the kid is doing their warm up. I mean, instead of me sitting on the bench and, being on my phone while the kid's doing bands and workouts, well, how do I utilize that 5 minutes? So it's maximizing those minutes that you have. So I'll do that if necessary. But then tournaments are honestly where like the most of my conversations come from. Sitting with the parents, educating them at the tournament. Team lunches, team dinners at tournaments are always the best. Where you getting the parents together, them communicating, because we have such a tight knit group. We're not this massive factory where it's just a bunch of players. We are so personalized, and the parents are all so close that the parents are always communicating, and I'm always sometimes worried about what they talk about. But during clinic, I'll see the parents upstairs; they're all talking, right? They all communicate, they share their experiences. I stress to my players how by a player going to a tournament, like let's say if like little Paisley, she goes and plays Junior Orange Bowl. Qualifies, plays main, draws the 2 seed. Very, very tough first round match. But that experience that she brings back helps educate the other players. And then they see, okay, well, she made this sacrifice and coach made the sacrifice of going to Miami, sitting through 5 days of rain, finding ways to work through. Good old Junior Orange Bowl, one of the worst. I saw you posted something about that. You were there. One of the worst experiences ever in tournament history. But she brings that experience back. The other players share that experience with her. We share it as a team, and everybody is learning from one another. So I've established this system where there's so much communication, not only within the parents, but also within the players, to where the players end up respecting one another, but somebody always has something to look forward to from one another. So kind of to really wrap up that question, it's just making the time for it. It's prioritizing. It's making sure that things are discussed. Usually at the beginning of the year, on some of the free weekends I have, I'll carve out weekend time for player parent meetings. I'll do like 30, 45-minute spots, typically at the beginning of the year. And then whenever I feel necessary, I'll just say, hey, we need to meet about this. We need to talk about this. But it's just maximizing the time that you have, instead of kind of letting minutes add up. And if you realize that minutes add up, you start to learn how to use them.
You mentioned the other important priority, right? We talked about communicating with parents and everybody, but you talked about how tournaments are such a priority. Not just that's where you do a lot of communicating. You're also watching a lot of matches. But me and you talked about this, where probably our most frustrating thing about junior tennis outside of UTR is the fact that coaches don't go to tournaments. And not only,
Correct.
And if they do go to tournaments, it happens to be the level ones, right? Or the level twos, right? So, you make that a priority. How many tournaments do you go to a year, if you had to say roughly?
25 probably minimum.
25. And then if you add up, you also have other coaches that go to tournaments as well, right? So,
we're talking
about.
I'll send them. So depending on the tournament, like when we have usually the L3 closed or something like Mid-Atlantic or other events, I'll also, when I'm at a tournament, I'll also send my other coaches to other tournaments as well, so that I'm not if I have a 12s is in one location, 14s is in another, we'll cover all of our grounds, and I'll send coaches to all the other events as well.
So you guys are covering a bunch of tournaments.
We're
all different levels. You're everywhere. And it's not just for communicating with parents, right? I mean, why do you think it's so important? I mean, parents are obviously watching the kids, so you can't talk to them all day long. So why is that so important? And why are you almost doing a full-time schedule like a player, right? Most players play somewhere around 20 tournaments a year. That's your weekends, your times. Why do you see the value going into there outside of
So
communicating with him?
the first thing that comes to my mind is because it's what has to be done in order for my players to achieve what they want to achieve. It has to be done. You have to be present. That's number one.
Why?
Well, I have two number ones.
What's so important about you being present? Just applauding them? Hey, nice shot.
So there's a few things. I think I think there's a couple different reasons why. So there's, from the emotional perspective, it shows that we care. They're using their weekend time. This person cares about me. When you have somebody that cares about you and they're empathetic and they are by your side, the care that it shows to juniors between the ages of 11 to 17. I mean, having someone show up for you when you look over and you see that somebody's in your corner, I mean, it is the most rewarding thing for a kid to look over and be like, "Damn, my coach is here." How many tournaments did you play in futures that you were alone?
God. Oh,
What would you say the percentage? What's the percent of tournaments you played where nobody was watching you?
Comfortably over 95%.
So 5% of the matches you had somebody there supporting you.
And maybe less. I just want to be factual. Yeah.
And how did that feel?
Tough. I mean, you get used to it because you don't have a choice.
No, I'm talking about how did it feel when you had somebody there supporting you?
Oh, when they were there, I mean, it was just more fun. It was more fun.
Yeah.
It was cool to look over and see that somebody cared. I feel like, I mean, I was pretty self-driven, but I will say in certain moments in time to just know I had somebody there, I did unintentionally work harder or focus more. I don't know. I felt more belief. Like if somebody's willing to come and watch me play, they must see something in me where they care enough to be there.
Exactly. And not only for the players, but also for the parents. When a parent sees that a coach shows up, they're like, damn, like they believe in my kid. And then the parent's going to be more willing to do more for the kid. So it's a whole ripple effect, right? So me going to a tournament from the emotional side, we're not even talking about the tennis yet. We don't even need it. We're going to put tennis on the back burner. From the emotional side, it shows the kid you're empathetic, you care, you believe in them, and you're going to support them. From the parent side, we're asking parents to show up for their kids and to make the investment and to sign up for these tournaments, and for families to, hey, you're losing this weekend because you're going to go travel to a tournament for 2.5 hours. It makes the parent also have the want to do more because they see that the coach is showing up, and then it's just this huge emotional ripple effect where everybody is invested, and that's what creates success in my mind. Now, from the tennis side of it, there's two different versions of a person, right? There's the player side of it. You're just the player versus the competitor, right? I'm sure that's a phrase that everybody has heard. And so, are you seeing the player and the athlete, or are you seeing the competitor? You don't really get to see what happens as how they handle situations unless you are at a tournament. As we all know, it can be really difficult to set the tone in an environment in a training setting to replicate a tournament setting. It's not an easy task. Can it be done? That's a totally separate podcast, but it can be done, but it's very difficult to replicate that emotion. So from the tennis side, I have to see what my players are implementing. What are they retaining? Where are they confident? What's happening in certain moments of the match? How do they handle themselves? Do they seek excuses? Do they overreact? How do they handle dealing with refs on the court? Are they respectful of the other player? Are they respectful of tournament directors? Are they there's just so many elements to seeing how they are at a tournament. How are they with the other players? What are they doing after a match? Are they getting on a bike and cooling down? Are they eating at the appropriate times? Are they taking care of their bodies? But one of the things I think that really get caught up where if you're not present at a tournament is there's three different perspectives of a tennis match. There's the player perspective, or sorry, if a coach isn't there, there's the player perspective and then there's the parent perspective. So one of the parents that I've spoken to, she told me, she goes, Chris, you don't have, she was like, I would pay you any amount of money for how much of like you take away from me not having to talk to my kid after a match. They're like, the value in you being there and me not having to deal with the emotional craziness has so much value. But if I'm not present at a tournament, I hear two sides. I get the player side and I get the parent side. Sometimes they're right, sometimes there's wrong. But I'll sit at tournaments with the parents and I go, what do you see? And then they'll tell me what they see, and I'm like, I don't mean any disrespect, but you're completely wrong. Like, because they see the surface level, right? They see what's happening, but they don't understand the true core of what is occurring in the match, right? They might see, oh man, like, you know, they missed a forehand. You guys got to go work on their forehand. Well, it wasn't a forehand issue. Maybe it was a decision making issue, or maybe you also forgot to tell me that they made forehand errors every time that they had gained points, or you forgot to mention that they made forehand errors when they were moving forward. It's like, okay, well, we don't have to work on the forehand. It could be something completely different. So what ends up happening is the wrong message gets delivered, and then you go into a practice session and then the coach is working on something that the wrong message was delivered, and then you're training something where there's no point in even training it because it's not even a problem, but then that problem arises again because it wasn't diagnosed properly. So that's from the tennis side of why I'm there.
Yeah, I want to point out one of the cool things that you do put out, and you showed on social media, and I think it's something that we have to ask about. I think in today's world of team sports versus tennis, we see how a lot of people are, some people are attracted to tennis because of the individuality, but I would say a lot are
Yes.
actually put off by it. They like being part of a team environment, social aspect, making friends, and feeling like they're with a team there. So often we see your players together watching their peers play, their friends play, their
Yeah.
other fellow practice partners. They're watching, they're supporting. That's rare. We don't see
Yeah.
that often. Uh, what made you want to do that? I mean, did you bring that from soccer? Why do you think that's helpful?
Um, not from soccer. It comes from the empathetic part that you and I talked about, where showing up for somebody and show that you care just creates this ripple effect of positivity, but also respect within the players. I think if you go to any tennis, I don't want to say any, I think a majority of tennis academies, I think especially in Florida or some of the bigger factory style ones, is like players don't have respect within certain players, and they also only want to hit with certain types of people. Last night we were doing drills where I have one player who is 17 and he's closing in on a 10 UTR, and I have a young girl who is 12 who is a mid 5 UTR, yet they were training together and benefiting from it. Off the top of your head, you're thinking, how is that even possible? Well, it's because of the respect that they have for each other and the way that something is structured and how it benefits both people. But there's a respect within our community of players. When we're at tournaments, I stress it to them, get off your phone and support somebody. Because if you were playing, you would love for somebody to be cheering you on. And so, but then the cool thing is, even with the parents, are the exact same way. They'll be like, "Oh, so and so's playing. We got to go to court four. Go, like, let's grab lunch and we get back. They're going to finish their warm up. We can watch them play." Tennis is a team training environment, but an individual sport, right? It's competed as an individual, but you have to be able to train in a team environment. It's not all about you. Training isn't individual unless it's obviously in a private setting. But if you're in clinic, I can't have, like, let's say if you and I hit, I can't have a good practice unless, you know, you're in a good headspace. Like, I need you. Like, I need JY to have a good practice today. So I can't be rude or disrespectful. Like, then you're not going to want to train with me. Or, I don't want to be the kid that nobody wants to hit with because I'm rude or I'm throwing my racket or I'm disrespectful or I'm complaining about who I'm hitting with. So for me, it's just kind of like the respect in the environment, and we've established this little family, and like what you see on stuff that I share, like it's real. It's not a staged moment. Like parents will take pictures of all of us together. We don't like I'll after a tournament, I'll get like 4 pictures sent to me, and they like took pictures of us, and it's like the coolest thing ever. Obviously, when we're looking at the camera, right, we'll have that's when we're, hey, take a picture. But no, I mean, we just really genuinely respect and support each other, and we genuinely cheer on each other when everybody is successful. Like if somebody has a good weekend, and on a Monday or Tuesday in clinic, so and so had a huge weekend, boom, we're all clapping for them. Like we support each other and we want each other to be successful. But I really stress with them, it's like, hey, if player A wins and they have a good weekend, like you guys understand that by him having a huge weekend and bringing that energy into clinic, you guys are benefiting from his success. And that's kind of all falls in line with what I was sharing with you before about what Trizzino Tennis Academy means to me, is because of all the sacrifice I made in my 20s. And I try to relay that same message where it's like, if this person is successful and if that person is around these people, they're naturally going to be successful. It's like if we all get in a room and we sit around a dinner table with you, me, and maybe 3 or 4 other coaches that we respect, like we're going to have a really good conversation and we're going to pick up from something from somebody because of the success that they shared. And so we apply that same thing with all the different tournaments. So and so did this, they had a huge weekend, even if it's an L6 or an L7. So and so, they had a huge tournament win, it's their first L6 win. That kid is coming into the clinic freaking pumped that they just won their first tournament. So guess what? Their energy is going to make everybody else around them better. And then it's just this constant ripple effect. And it's constant growth because somebody is always bringing something beneficial to the clinic.
Well, look,
Go team.
That's what I love about it. I think it's the team aspect, the family aspect. I mean, you even said the word family. It's awesome. I think we need a lot more of that in today's society. I think forget the achieving the tennis part. We have so many kids that are searching for community, for connections, for peers that they feel connected to and that support each other. And in tennis, it's really hard to find. We hear the stories a lot from parents. You probably not as much. Me maybe a little bit more because I don't have a team. I work with families individually.
Yeah.
It's just how sometimes they feel alone out there, and they feel like they'll go. Well, no, I've heard real stories about when their child goes to play and that other kid had like 7 other kids, rooting for that one, their opponent.
Yeah.
And they're out there, even though it's mom and dad, it's just not the same. And maybe they get through the match, but it's a tough experience for them. And look, hey, we need all the adversity moments that we can get when we're young, but we definitely want to enjoy the sport we're playing. And when we have a team supporting us, it's a lot more fun. So I think it's really awesome what you're doing. Look, I think your journey is awesome for so many reasons. Forget the fact that you're building a great academy. And I think a lot of kids, whether they end up staying with tennis or not, they're going to make friends for life, which to me is more important. I think you're more than even I knew before is just how awesome your story is. You just chose to follow what you love. The pathway was blinded. You didn't know where it was going to go. It was foggy, but you just knew like there's something pulling me in this direction, and I'm just going to pursue it. And when your parents ask, well, what does that entail? I don't know. I'll figure it out. And I think a lot more of our tennis kids can learn from that. Like, hey, if you don't get into the college you don't want to, that you wanted to, it's okay. Just follow your heart, follow your passion. And you're a great example of that. And that's led you to where you are now. But if you don't follow just doing what you love, you're not so goal and achievement oriented, I don't think you'd be where you are now. So look, man, thank you. Keep up the great work. I don't know if you have any last words for Trizzino Tennis and others listening out there, but thanks, man. Really appreciate your time.
Man, you got me ready to run through a brick wall right now. I'm about to like find the largest weight possible and just lift it as many times as I can.
Well, let's see how many people you can lift up. Tell everybody where they can find you.
So we're based in Williamsburg, Virginia, Mid-Atlantic, and we're exclusively training out of William and Mary. But no, I think the biggest message that I just really have to end this is, if you see a step in front of you, you have to take it. And the unknown is scary, but the known is in front of you, and you have to take that, and then it's going to continue to lead you somewhere else. Just like you never intended on having an online program. You probably never thought that you would be sitting at the box at Slams coaching Riley. I mean, we can't consume ourselves with what it is that we think we have to do, but you have to really trust what that pathway is. Hey, as a coach, I have a dream of winning a Slam one day as a coach. That's what my dream is. I want to develop a player and win a Slam with that player. Do I know the pathway to get there? No idea. But I know that that's something in my mind of what my end goal is. And I don't mind kind of sharing that with the world, because that's kind of what I'm working towards. But the unknown is scary, but take the step that's right in front of you, because it's going to continue to lead you to somewhere else. And so long as you do it with full trust and passion and love, and you don't expect something in return from it right away, it's going to get you there. And it's a really fun path. I'm still trying to figure out and learn what all of my journey means, personally, professionally. It continues to be a crazy, wild ride, but I think it's a matter of trusting it and enjoying it along the way. So
that's awesome.
Go team.
Thanks, man. Really appreciate your time.
Absolutely.
Well, there you have it. As you can see, if you listen to both episodes, he's an extremely interesting person, just a passionate coach with so much love for the game, trying to help his players, so much time dedicated, during the day, weekends, everything. He wants to be everywhere to help kids and parents, which I think is the interesting part. He's not just trying to help kids, he's trying to help the parents too. It's awesome to see the importance he plays there. So if you're in the Mid-Atlantic region, you have to go check Chris out. And if you're anywhere in the country, a lot of people are always trying to find out where can I go for summer camps or winter camps. Call Chris, get in on his camps. He's got a lot of great stuff, especially with ability to have indoor courts and outdoor courts. So check him out. And thanks everyone again for listening to another special guest episode. Have a great one and good luck out there.